Okay, so this is your first set of live room inputs in the live room. As you can see here, there's a lot of words going on here, but we'll go ahead and start in our top left. This is mic 2CRA or control room A, which is studio A. And you have inputs 1 through 12 at the top here, if you look at the top left. And this will feed whatever signal you have coming out of your microphone into the live room outputs on your patch bay in the control room. And like I said, there's 1 through 12 here. You also have control room B inputs if you are using Studio B, which will be covered in a later video. And we have 8 inputs there. If you move over to the top right, you also have your control room analog tie lines out. This is particularly helpful if you are reamping. So if you've already recorded a clean guitar signal and you want to send that through an amp and record that signal using an amp, that is what's called reamping, and that can be done utilizing the tie line outs here. You also have analog tie line ins as well. If you move to the bottom, we have control room A, tie line ends as well. And over here on the side is you have your cues. And so you'll plug in here in order to get signal to our cue mixes that run through power over Ethernet. So this is your second set of live room inputs for Studio A. At the top here, we have mic to control room A or Studio A, and that's your inputs 13 through 24. And these will go into your patch bay on Studio A. At the bottom here, we have mic to CRB or control room B. These go to control room B, which will be covered in a later video on an overview of Studio B. At the bottom, we have our live room speaker input selection. If you have it turned all the way to the left, you'll be on live room input. And what this means is anytime you use fold back B, it'll be your talk back to the musicians that are in the live room. If you have it set to off, you'll get no input from the speakers. And then control room A, this will allow you to patch any sort of audio signal through the live room input ends into the speakers that are in the live room. So for instance, during setup, if you want to listen to music or play any sort of audio whatsoever, you can do that through the control room A patches in the patch bay in the control room. So these are your isolation booth inputs, your ISO booth inputs. As you can see, we have 8 inputs that go into control room A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it resets. This is for control room B, and you have 4 inputs there. You also have your tie line outs, and if you go to the bottom here, you have your cue inputs as well.
So right now, we're just going to patch the mic that we already have set up in the live room onto the board and through a preamp before that. We're going to be taking our live room microphone out, number 1, because that's what we got in the live room, to the Avalon ends. And then we're going to patch our Avalon out to our SSL duality monitor ends. Then we're going to be taking our SSL duality channel output to our Ferrofish 80 line inputs.
Hello, welcome to the MyMix/TalkBack section of this video. So this is our MyMix website that we have pulled up. Most of the time it is already on. Beautiful. We're going to go over to the IEX16L where it says, this should say Studio A. We're going to click Edit, and that's where all of our channels are for the MyMix. On channel 1, if you have a beat that's already set up or like a stereo channel, you just label the first one. The second one you can leave blank. We'll say Pocse on this. And we're going to hit apply. Now that should have already changed inside the live room where it's already plugged in. This is pretty much how to set up your channels. This is pretty much done. All right. So as Harrison has shown us, we have our little sample vocal. We have it going, our output into A-MADI1. A-MADI1 is going to be this channel on this board, channel 1. So if I play the track back, right, it's a stereo channel, so we're hearing it on 1 and 2, right? Okay, so to get him to hear that in there with his headphones, we are going to take our Fairfish out, which is our, basically this is Pro Tools, the channels. We're going to go out of channel 1 into QMix input 1, which is the little computer screen that I showed you. Now, to get TalkBack working, we're going to go from TB out down here into QMix channel 3, since we're using a stereo channel. That's pretty much it. But, so we're going to demonstrate that Harrison can hear this. So we're going to be going from the live room input 1, which is where we have a mic plugged in right now. We're going to go into the, let's do MP2A, the second channel, and then out of the MP2A. These are pretty much like mimicking each other. We're going to go from that into the monitor input number 3. So theoretically, if I push the talkback button, the button should be lighting up green to show that it works. Now, we're going to hear Harrison. We're going to press external TB down here. Can you hear us, Harrison? Oh, wait. Why is he so quiet?
Yes, I can.
Why is it so quiet? So in classic RFG Studio fashion, some shit went wrong. So we were using the MP2A preamp, but now we have switched over here to the Avalon, which is a preamp, compressor, and EQ all in one. So it's really cool. So the patching is still sort of the same. We go from the live room output into the Avalon. Out of the Avalon, we're going into the Fairfish in, which is Pro Tools. Out of Pro Tools, back into the monitor, the same monitor that we had beforehand. So make sure your faders are up. And here's the real test. I'm going to press down on external T/B. Harrison, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello, hello? Yes, I can hear you, Gabe.
What's up, guys? So when you get out of the live room or when you enter from the outside, you open the door, and then you have all your XLR cables that you could possibly need. We have instrument cables down here, everything you could possibly need. And over here, inside, we have our Ethernet cables where it says Ethernet. We're going to use this for our MyMix. All right. And back over here to this little section that Jackson already showed you, we got this little Q input. You're going to grab your Ethernet cable from one end. You're going to plug it in. There. And we're going to take our Ethernet cable. We're going to drag it all the way down to where our MyMix is. Now over here, at the back of the MyMix, we have another Ethernet input. I'm going to plug it in, and notice how it's lighting up where it says MyMix. All right, so the inputs that we put over inside the studio on the MyMix website, we have the Pocse label that we put on, and then we have the talkback that we put on. And since these are dual mono, they show up as channels 1 and 2. Now you can scroll through these using this little wheel right here, and then you can click on it to adjust the volume, and you just scroll up. This way your musicians can control their own monitor levels from inside their headphones by simply putting the volume up. If they want to hear more vocal, they can turn that up. If they want to turn up their drums down here, you can just turn it up like that. Down here, we have our headphones for the MyMix that your musicians can use. Now, these are quite literally zip-tied down here for the fact that musicians tend to steal a lot here. So you can't steal these. Over here on the MyMix, you can just plug them into your inputs right here. And again, you can turn up your gain on the headphones just by using this little knob. Now, just like this, I can hear myself, and I'm happy.
So we can't possibly go over all the functions on the center of the board, but some of the important ones are your projects. So in the center left of the board, you have a small screen that you can tap SSL on to where you can look at your total zeros and some of your projects for the console. If you scroll up or down using the left knob, you can click on a project like Total Zero Legitness, and then you can select within Total Zero Legitness something like Total Zero Legitness Hella Tight. Select that. You can set your knobs here and they will be saved for future use, or whenever you're done with your projects, you can use it as a 0 for the board. If you press back, you can look at your other projects. Other functions on the board that you need to be aware of are your monitor level right here, your transport right here, which can control Pro Tools, your return to 0, which will take you to the beginning of your Pro Tools track, and your selection for your channels. Now you can also select your channels by pressing the button at the bottom of the channel right here, but you can also use the plus and minus to move through the channels right here. You can also use 2 to select multiple channels at the same time and apply certain things to them. What things do you want to apply? You can change what mix you're on, say if you wanted to switch to mix B, or apply yourself to multiple mixes. Or you can turn yourself on for certain buses. And you can also change your speaker settings by pressing these buttons in the middle here, which change you from the Genelex to the Aventone.
Alright, so over here we have our patch bay. At the top, we have our live room mic outs, ISO booth microphone outs, and Studio B microphone outs. Also, we have our pre-ins. Up here, we have our Farrowfish line ends, which the Farrowfish is going to be your my mix all the way up here. And down here, you have your SSL mic inputs. And anything past this goes straight to every single thing over here. You don't want to cross this line because it will basically blow up the studio. But down here, we have our Heritage Rack microphone preamps and all the other preamps just in this general area with our Mold 1, Mold 2, Mold 3, and Mold 4s right here. On the other side, we have our strip channels, such as Neve 8 and the Avion. Down here, we have our Farrowfish outs and our SS Duality monitor inputs. From here goes 1 to 24, and on their side, 25 to 48. And these are your insert sends for the duality. These are your insert returns back into the duality. And then this is your SSL outputs for duality. These are going to be your Farrowfish line inputs, your duality bus outs, and duality key inputs. And over here, we have our MyMix Q mix inputs. It goes from 1 to 16. So on the actual duality itself, 1 to 24 are all normaled, and you use 1 to 16 input inserts. Now going down more, here's your duality mix insert sends and some other sources such as your mothership and A2 source. Over here you have your talkbacks and your QA, B, and FX sends. Down here you have your mix insert returns and your mix outputs with your monitor sends right next to them. Over here you have your live room line outs, your machine line outs, and your Studio B line outs. Over here you have your radar options, which are for the radar in the back studio. And over here you have your compressors, your EQs, and you have your focus right over here.
Okay, now we're going to talk about outboard gear. So we have a lot of outboard gear. Here are our preamps. This is where you want to bring the signal in before you hit the board so that you can get good level. It also has certain characteristics that it adds based on which preamp you choose. Here we have the Neve 1073s, which are really popular in the music industry. Once you get out, you'll realize that these are really common for vocals as well as drums. We also have the Millennia preamps, the MP2A, and the La Chapelles. Over here, we have Dynamics processors. Here we have the Transit Designer, which is used to shape your transients for drums or whatever else you want to use it for. We have the Attack knob here, where you can make it more or less attack. We also have the Sustain knob, where you can sustain the transient out a little bit more or make it shorter. Down here, we have the Distressors, which are really good for bass. I like them on bass personally. It adds a little bit of distortion that gives your bass more characteristic. It makes it stand out in the mix. Down here, we have the Purple Audios, which are a clone of the 1176s. You probably have this plugin, so if you're familiar with any other 1176, this is basically it in outboard gear form. Over here, we have the EQs. At the top of the rack, we have the Mag EQ4s, which are really popular for the airband. I like to use these if I'm processing vocals and I want to make the words more articulate that the vocalist is saying. So I'll go to the airband and turn that up. I'll usually leave the rest of these alone and do all my processing either on the board or in Pro Tools. I really just come to this for the airband. Down here we have the Pultec EQ, which is really popular for that smiley face EQ curve. You can boost your low end and then you can attenuate it so that it removes the mud and just gives you that heavy low end that you're looking for. You can also do the same with your high end if you want to add more air, similar to the Mag EQ4s, and it allows you to attenuate as well here. Down here we have our channel strips. We have Neve channel strips, such as the 1084. We also have the Avalon 737, which is personally my favorite for vocals. It's also been used for bass instruments, but I personally like it for vocals. It has like a silk tone to it. It has a preamp gain. It also has a compressor built into it. You can also EQ your vocals or whatever else you choose to use this for. This unit here is used for bus processing. So if you want to process your entire group of drums or your entire group of guitars or whatever elements that you have grouped together, you come to this rack. This is really good for any compression you want to add to like the mastering at the end of a mix as well. Here we have the Shadow Hills compressor. We also have the Manly Verymew and the Unfair Child.
Okay, so right here, we have a giant rack of guitar processing, amps, distortion modules, filters, modulations, echoes, all of that is on this rack right here. I am not a guitar player, so I can't exactly tell you exactly how all of this works, but it sounds good. From the top, you have your plasma rack, which is your distortion module. Moving down these two right here are your line 6 effects processors. You have a filter, a modulation, and a echo effects processor. And this is your Sans amp. It's a pretty straightforward amp module. You got a couple little controls here you can mess with to dial in a tone that you like. Down here is we have the Kemper. I know this one right here is very popular with a lot of the guitarists. This is just like an all-in-one amp suite, and it's got pretty much anything you could ask for on it. Obviously, amplifiers, different types of tones, reverbs, echoes, EQs. It's got a tuner on it if you need to tune your guitar. This thing is really great. Right below it is kind of its cousin, the Axe Effects by Fractal Audio, which does pretty much the same thing. You're just kind of getting, like a different flavor of that. Some people prefer the Kemper unit. Some people prefer the Axe Effects unit. And that's pretty much it for this guitar rack. Okay, and then on the back of this unit, we have a couple more units as well, but mainly your patch bay is down here. So from the top, we have this giant Korg pitch black tuner. If you want to tune your guitar and make it extra expensive. Below that is we have our Ampeg ZVT4 Pro. This has a graphical EQ here, so each one of these are like fixed EQ bands, and you can really dial in your tone on this machine right here. Below it, we have another Sam's amp unit, which is another amp module. Once again, more ways to dial in your tone. Kind of pick your flavor on this thing. And then below that, right here, we have your patch bay. And the long story short out of this is whatever amp you are plugging into on your guitar, find it on the back and take it using their main outs. And you're going to bring that over to one of your preamplifiers that we have on the rest of the rack units. And you're going to maybe need to use one of these patch cables right here if you're using any of the effect sends or line outs. Otherwise, you'll get a TT cable that goes to XLR in order to plug into the preamplifiers.
So how are you going to want to get your Dante effects processors is you're first going to want to come down to the channel strip. I'm going to be using an effects send so that we can send it to the RedNet system. So I'm going to both want to turn it on and up. And then we're going to head over to the patch bay. Because I'm using my effects sends 1, we're going to be using the effects sends 1 on the patch bay to go all the way down here to our RedNet analog ins. This is going to be what sends it in Dante to our effects processors. This is the patch we're using later to get it back. We're using the RedNet analog outs to go to a new channel input via the SSL duality monitor inputs. This is sending it back from our effects processor to a channel on the board. Here's our current vocal track. To get our reverb effect on it, we're going to send it through Dante to the RedNet A16R ST ACR 1. And we're going to send that to our Brocasti number 1 left in. This is going to send it to our reverb unit. To get it back, we're going to need to send it from the Brocasti number 1 left out to RedNet A16R ST ACR. This is going to send it to our reverb unit and back to our RedNet, which goes to our physical patch on the patch bay. Because we're sending it to a new channel, on channel 2, we should have our reverb when we play now. You can then edit your reverb effects on the Brocasti right here. Everything you need to change your reverb, including settings and timing, is right here. If you want to use a reverb effect like the AKG, you'll have to go in the machine room and edit your effects there.
Morning, everybody. I'm Scott Wynn. I am the chief audio engineer here at the RFG studio and adopted advisor for POCSC. Today we're going to go over the machine room, talk about all the connections with the Studio A setup. So come on in. So at the top of the rack, we're dealing with an Antelope audio clock. The clock system itself is set up so that A Studio can be clocked off of the first clock, B Studio is off of the second clock, and the third clock handles the Dante audio system. To set a clock for any of the particular studios, you merely press the studio that you want to change, use the dial here to change it to the sample rate that you want to operate at, and you press enter on it. If you don't want to do anything, you can click back on the clock and it will revert back to the original clock time. That's the word clock for all of A Studio. That affects both the HD MADI interface and the Sync HD, which controls the sample rate for Pro Tools. You need to make sure that your session is set up with the same sample rate as what the clock is saying. Otherwise, you will have jitter and possible artifacts that we would have to fix later on. Down here, we have the MADI router. This is where all of the MADI optical comes in and out for the studio. We'll do that for advanced routing for the Ferrofishes coming into the studio and then out into Pro Tools HD for the system. Down a little lower on the rack, we have the computer system for A Studio and B Studio. Both of these are Mac Studios with the PCIe expansion chassis. Both of them have dual monitors coming out of them for the A Studio and the B Studio. We've added in a rack shelf for your hard drive to rest on for the A Studio. If you're using USB-C, you can plug in directly on the front of the Mac. If you're using USB 3.0, you can see that there is a 3.0 4-port right here that you can have access to, that you can plug your hard drive in. A Studio has one rack, B Studio has the second rack, and those drawers can be pulled out for that purpose. Over here on the top of the rack, we have the bane of our existence, which is the KVM extension made by Geffen. The keyboard, the video, and the mouse is what KVM stands for. We have a dual monitor system. So up on the A Studio, we have the left monitor, which also carries the USB-C or USB. We also have the right monitor for Studio A. Then we have the B Studio monitor on the left, B Studio monitor on the right. These occasionally go out, and the send unit no longer sends to the receive unit. So we have to come to the back of the rig here. The power supplies are set up so left to right, A Studio left, A Studio right, B Studio left, B Studio right. So if there's a problem with a particular monitor and it goes out, you unplug from here, give it a couple of seconds, plug it back in. Over on this side of it, we have the networking portion of the studio. And you can see it's a tangled mess, but essentially the A Studio's Cat 6A come out here. The next section of 8 is the B Studio's Cat 6A. And then we have a number of devices that are also from the machine room punched down on this panel that you can grab from and route to the A Studio or B Studio. The top network switch here is the KVM system. And so this routes all the network audio and video for the KVM system. The next switch down is for the MIDI and the MADI network, also the SSL. Then we have our internet from the university is the smaller one. We have our fiber optic network from Corning located next to that. We have our MyMix switch for all of our audio over Ethernet for MyMix, which is the Q system we use in A Studio and B Studio. Below that, we have the Dante network switch, and this handles all of our Dante network. The Dante network is connected to all the major audio effects processors here in our studio. And so we've got an A16R that converts Dante into analog audio and back. We have 16 ins and 16 outs, and they're connected to our 4 Bricasti reverbs. So these are the M7 Bricastis. We have the Tegler Audio, which is a stereo tube reverb. We have an AKG BX5, which is a spring reverb that is a stereo unit as well. Below that, we have an Eventide H9000R. This has a Dante system built into it, so you connect directly to it with 32 ins and 32 outs that you can use on the H9000R software called Emote. We have a D16R that converts Dante into digital audio, and that digital version is AES-EBU 3. And the first 8 talk to the TC Electronics, and the Lexicon 960L takes the next 8. And that is essentially the setup for all of the machine room for Studio A and parts of Studio B.